Yes, that's it. Very good evening, everyone. Very good evening, sir. Now with
Morning.
Professor Ravi Povai, sir, from Industrial Design Center, Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay, Mumbai. Sir is a very renowned professor in the field of design across the globe. Sir, I am welcoming you on behalf of this Fundamental of Social Design course and my team. Myself, Manish Arora, faculty member, Department of Applied Art, Faculty of Visual Art, uh, Banaras Hindu University is presenting this course with renowned guest speakers. This program is running in the collaboration with Maryland Institute College of Art, MICA, Baltimore, USA, and Michigan State University, USA, Michigan. Now we are under our fifth module, and today with us, Professor Ravi Povai, sir. Sir is today giving their expertise in affordable design segmentation in relation with the social design. Now, sir, I am welcoming you and requesting you to please start your session as per your convenience. Thank you,
Yeah.
sir.
So thanks, Manish, for the introduction. Yeah. So I'm very happy to share with you, my perception of what is affordable design, and affordable design in the context of social design assumes a very prominent role because we are from India, and conceptually and theoretically and practically, lot of applications and developments in affordable design has actually originated and have actually happened in our country. So it's actually a very, very nice thing to, make a presentation on this topic. What I'll do is I'll share my slides, and then, yeah. So are you able to see it?
Yes, sir. It is visible. Visible.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to talk on affordable design. And in that, three things, we look at it from the context from our own country. I'll also show you work that has been done in this particular field. And also, the last part of it is very important. What is it that makes it affordable, in terms of design? Okay, so we'll go one by one. Okay, I'll talk giving three examples, all from my own experiences, my family's experiences. So actually, I'm starting with my father. He's no more, but in the 90s, he decided to actually. He used to be working in Bangalore, and he decided to, he retired, and then he decided to go look after the estate, which are from the Western Hills in a place called Coorg. So he shifted to this rural place, and this is 90s, remember? And his children were located in different parts, in fact, different parts of the world. And he needed to communicate with them. And please remember, making a phone call in the 90s, at least an international call was exorbitantly expensive. Okay. And just then the internet had come. Okay, and if you look at the structure of internet, okay, you can open up your email, and you have a password and you have to do it. Okay, he being an elderly person, he was kind of reluctant to, get a computer, then learn how to type and do all this. Okay, so as usual, this is something which nicely and very, very spontaneously happens in our country. The local, public call office operator in Coorg, you know, he suggests this to my father, see, why don't I open an email account for you? Okay, I'll give you the password, okay, and the login. Okay, so whenever some message comes to the email, I'll open it up and I'll make a call to you and tell you. And if you want to pass on another message to your siblings, all that you need to do is, give me a call back and I'll type that in and send it. Okay. Of course, there's a question of privacy. Okay. And my father sent the login and the password to all his children. We also got. And yeah, of course, it was not so private because there's somebody looking into it. But in terms of a service, it became quite smooth, you know, because, we could be in touch with my father without any expense. And all the expense that it required was 5 rupees per transaction, if my father used to do. Okay, so this is something which happens all the time in our country. People find ways to actually make things happen, which are very affordable. Okay, so in that context, I'm going to another person. We know him very well. Okay, he's Jaspir Singh. He moved from Jalandhar to Mumbai. Okay, in the 80s. Okay, and he used to drive a black and white taxi, which was not actually owned by him. Okay, he used to pay some money to the black and white cab. Okay, and drive this. Okay, and he being an industrious and person, and what he did was that he realized in some months in Mumbai, it's terrible. It's nice to have an AC, so he gets the car fitted with an AC. Okay, and he used to say that if you want the AC, no problem. It's just that the charges go by 1/4 more, and I'll on the AC for you. Okay, so he had the service, and we got to know him in the 80s. And yeah, we had to call the main gate. We were in IIT, and they'll pass on the message to Jaspir, and that's how we used to come and pick us up whenever we used to go. And if we needed the AC, we could do that. Okay, and a lot of things changed as soon as uh, the mobile phone came in. Okay, suddenly, he printed a card called Jaspir Singh and just nothing but the phone number on it. Okay, he started giving to all the people he used to normally give it to, and then he realized that he got more number of people than he can service. Okay, so he got his friend circle to be part of the network, and all that you need to do was just call Jaspir, and within minutes you had a taxi. Okay, this was precursor to Ola and Uber and all that, right? And he's been doing this network, and he stays near IIT, so he had a network of quite a lot of cabs, and it was a very nice service. And by the time we got to know all the drivers, there was a personal rapport, and whenever you need to trust a driver to take it to a place, we would always call Jaspreet to it. Okay. And interestingly, this also happened. Okay. So because his business expanded, he got loans from the bank and he bought his own car. Within a couple of years, he bought two more cars. So he had his son come from Jalandhar, start driving one more of the cars. And that's how. And slowly he built a house in Jalandhar. Now he's got his whole family he could afford a better place to stay in Mumbai. So his whole family came into Mumbai. That's how it happened. Okay. Uh, uh, you would think that what would happen to the system when Ola and Uber came in, right? Not really, because the trust and the network that he had built in was very strong. It didn't go back. Okay, and I'll need to tell you this. Just a couple of months back in April, we went to get our first vaccination. April. Okay, so we called Jinder, who's a cousin of Jaspreet, to take us there. Okay, and while going to the vaccination place, which is nearby hospital, we were asking Jinder, thinking that he must have had a very bad time in the last 1 year because of COVID and stuff like that. Okay, which is expected, right? Because it has hit at least the taxi industry supposed to have hit very badly. And to our surprise, his answer was really taken aback. Okay, we got taken aback because he said that not a single day I've had without a job. I mean, he says that in fact I've had to service more than the normal times. Okay, and then we asked him how come. He said that all the people had built faith in. They needed something or the other during the COVID period. That who else did they go to? They came to me. Okay, and everybody was charging hell a lot of money to take them to places. He said, I didn't increase a pie. it was just the rate as it was before COVID, because he says that my trust and network is for a long time. Okay. So this is another very nice social example. It's not just, Jaspir or Jinder that we know his family, we've gone to their Gurudwara to eat food. It's much more than just a service somebody is doing, okay, which is typically what happens in our country. Okay, third example is also a wonderful example. It's from this very industrious, district called South Canberra. And people from there have started institutions, banks, and if you remember, they've also started hotels. Okay, the most popular Udupi restaurant actually has its genesis from this particular district. And you'll see them, of course, in the South India, you'll find them in all the streets. But even in Mumbai, or Delhi or other places, you do find them, okay, and they're very popular. And there is a minimum standards that you expect out of them, and they've grown. Okay, but what is unknown to the whole world is the social aspect of this enterprise. Okay, so for example, when they started in the 60s, 70s, okay, and the 80s, there were a lot of people in that district who needed to get education and they didn't have the means to do it. So one of the things which all these restaurants offered is that they used to offer them free food and lodging for doing the waiting services, and strictly all these kids had to go to school. Okay. They used to take shifts such that they go to school and come back. Okay. They had a place to stay at night. They had food to eat. Okay. And if they earn something out of tips, that's their pocket money. Okay. So wonderful. Okay. So by the late 90s, all the kids in the district actually got educated. I mean, some stories are really nice. For example, we were living in Bangalore, and my brother used to say, I can't go to this Udupi restaurant, that Udupi restaurant. The reason is because he says, the waiter is actually studying with me in the college. Okay, so if I go there, they won't charge me anything. Okay, and the social enterprise extends to further. If you're a very honest worker and you've been with them, at some point of time, you're actually made a partner in the business. Okay. And you'll see that he was a waiter at some point of time. 10 years later, you go, you'll see him actually sitting behind the counter, you know, or they would have started another restaurant somewhere else. Okay. So this is how the network, happened, and that's how they grew it. Okay. So for example, here, if you look at the essence of it, these are all human centric. They're based on human relationships. Okay, how you form communities. They're based on also forming good networks. Okay, and many times in the first instance, it also involved tweaking of technology. Okay, so all these, in the long run, actually go towards what we are calling it as affordable in that sense. Yeah. So in all the three cases you found, okay. So some statistics about a country, okay. Yeah, you all know this. Okay, almost 1 in 6 human being is an Indian. Okay, and we have a large number of people living in the rural areas as compared to the urban areas. I mean, that shift is happening. Okay. But normally the rural areas were a neglected lot. So it needs intervention. Okay. We also need some more literacy rate. It's growing, it's coming up. Okay. So that's not a very bad figure. We also have a factor of diversity. Okay. We're full of languages. We have to deal with that. Okay, and it's actually a good thing because it brings in variety, and there are so many things one can do. So the diversity is actually an asset. Because of that, we also have things in numbers. Okay, our population is huge, so number of newspapers, films, 1 million graduate as engineers. Okay, we still fortunately have 30 million gifted craftsmen, okay, who still do very affordable, crafts. Okay, and these two figures are really interesting. okay, that we still have 12.8 million rural enterprises. And if you look at the medium, small scale, micro industries, it's about 26 million. Okay, that's a large number if you look at it. And all these factors actually go towards feeding this, right? Okay, so this we can keep it at the back of the mind and see what's actually good for people in our country. Okay, can we think of something which has a social, economical, cultural relevance and also make it happen? Okay, so let's look at some examples. That's the background and where we come from. So we look at some examples right now. Okay, I start with Professor Anil Gupta. His name has been mentioned before. He started this wonderful, network called as the National Innovation Foundation, and he started, every year he walks hundred of miles into the rural areas to collect information, document things, talk to farmers, get insights into how they are thinking of something else, how innovation happens, and he's actually documented the whole thing on web space. The reason being that once it's documented, either it's there available as open source for others to follow, but it also gets you know kind of blueprinted as saying that this has already happened. Okay, so somebody else can't claim patents on that. Okay, and if you look at it, it's got almost 250,000 innovations, okay, documented in this very nice database. And he's got several programs. One is that there are awards which are done, it's national awards which are done every year for innovation. He has innovations which are awarded from students who think of really nice, socially relevant, affordable solutions. Okay, he has projects that you can work with Professor Anil Gupta on ideas that they can take it from the rural areas and bring it to to an industry. Okay, whatever design improvements you can do on the way. Okay, so that's something which happens over here. Okay, just one second. Okay, so next example is Navnirmiti, an NGO which has this very nice intention of turning uh, toys into learning material. Okay, so if you want to learn maths, you can totally play and learn, you know, up to class 7, and they have a maths lab where it happens. Okay, so the person behind it is, again, somebody who's an academician. Okay, Vivek Montero, and Dr. Vivek Montero, and he's kind of been at the behind the scenes to think of all these ideas and to implement it. Okay, and now it's implemented in 6,000 government schools in India and also some parts of Africa. Okay, so it's a very simple, adoptable method. Okay, and very inexpensive. Okay, because they are made with low cost materials, simple ways of doing it, and with a small amount of money, you can actually make this maths laboratory and put it up in schools, and the kids actually enjoy learning, subject like mathematics with a lot of fun. Okay, so that's behind it. Similarly, toys from trash is again a very experimental idea, which came in, and using trash, how do you actually explain a scientific principle? That was the basis of it, and the person behind this is Professor Arvind Gupta. Okay, he's calls himself a toy maker from toys from things that are wasteful and you actually find a use for it. Okay, and again, see, he's also part of the open source movement, and he's documented all this in a web space. Okay, so there are 700 different scientific principles or projects that you can see it, and as you can see, it's used by many schools. Okay, and if you go to Arvind Gupta .com, and you'll find a lot of reference materials with respect to learning and children. Okay, so this is an initiative which he did. Okay, and he kind of spent a lot of time doing this. Okay, this is the third story, a very dear story and a very relevant story, actually. Okay, the person behind it, the eye doctor, in the 60s and 70s, he used to, go across South India, almost all the states he covered. He used to go into the very rural areas and he just put an announcement saying if anybody has an eye problem, he used to set up a tent literally in the dried fields and he used to people used to line up and he used to start treating them. Okay, and to his surprise, he saw that the queues were never ending. So many people needed these services, and the mechanism of our hospital system actually never reached these corners. Okay, and that he said that, see, we need to do something, which makes this system reach to all the people who need these services. Also, he realized that there are some people who can afford it and many who cannot afford it. Okay, so it has to be a system which kind of serves both. Okay, if you ask a poor person to pay for it, he'll say, "Let me be with my problem. It's okay." Okay, so he thought of a wonderful system, you know, uh, called the Aravind Eye Hospitals. Okay, now of course, over the period, it has spread around many parts of South India. It's expanded even into the other parts of the country. Okay, and the numbers you can see, it's 350,000 eye operations in a year, has treated 34 million patients since 1976, 60% free of cost. Okay, excellent quality of care. These hospitals are like the best of the hospitals anywhere in the world because they maintain quality, it's clean, very high standards. How did he do it? One of the things he said was that he was very inspired by the way McDonald's standardized, production and brought in efficiency. It takes just a couple of minutes. By the time you drive around a McDonald's station, you actually have your food, all ready and packed, hot, right? Yeah. So within this 2-3 minutes they can actually serve the choice of your food, okay, from the time you order, right? So he actually studied very deeply how this was implemented, and he implemented systems into the way operations are done, patients are treated. Okay, and he brought down the cost of treatment to such an extent that you can actually make 60% of it free to the people who come there. Okay, a great example. And this has happened because of his experience. Okay, and he's also understanding that there are a lot of people who cannot actually afford these services, right? So he has a very nice system. So he's created a system which will grow on its own. Okay, at the same time, gives it free of cost to people who need them. Okay, the other, I think a very nice example is the Jaipur, food, which is meant for people who have lost their limbs. Okay, and it started as an experimental thing, that because they found something which is very flexible, which is molded, rubberized mold, and that flexibility was quite good. And then of course, once they had what they wanted to do, they also took help from IITs and MIT to make it better. Okay, and interestingly, it's based on a donor model, so it's free of cost to whoever wants it. Even after a few years, if it gets damaged or needs replacing, like if you're a growing person, they'll do it free of cost for you. Okay, so you can see the numbers: 1.55 million users are using it. Yeah. So again, a great initiative. Okay, very affordable. Okay, they brought down the cost as well as they're able to fund it. Okay. Uh, so somebody who actually took up on experiences of these two uh, is the Narayana Healthcare. Okay, Okay, and it was started by a cardiologist, and he didn't actually think of it as a free setup, but he said, "I'm going to make it as affordable as possible." Okay, it's actually a profit-making listed company. Okay, it's a private company, but it does something which at 10 times the less cost than actually it is. Okay, so see, he believes these sayings, hands that serve are more sacred than the lips that pray. Mother Teresa does over 100,000 operations. An open heart surgery is just 1,500, unbelievably, low in price. Okay, they marry affordability and quality. Okay. And of course, it's an expanding company. Okay. When people have said, don't go to smaller towns, okay, you cannot make, you know, your business prosper there. He didn't heed to that. He's opened up hospitals in Mysore and places like that. Okay. And his system is also very interesting. Okay. So he's, they've calculated the cost of being in the hospital. Okay, so if you can stay in the hospital for less time, it's better. So in fact, if you have to get operated in one of these hospitals, the family has to go through a training process for a week, because they have to learn how to look after the patient at home, so that the patient is not kept for a long time at the hospital. He's discharged as soon as possible. Okay, he knows that illnesses can spread through air conditioning. So most of his hospitals have the free air coming in, high ceilings. Okay, so they've taken off air conditioning because it becomes much more easier to maintain such setups. So they have it. It's based on sound principles that they have been able to do it. But if you look at it in the bigger picture, it's brought in affordability and also something which is listed as a profit-making company. Okay, I can't but not leave Ramdev for what he has done. Okay, so if you look at the essence of what he's done, is that he's actually talking about your well-being. Okay, and that well-being is through through yoga and practices, which can actually is actually looking at. Yeah, yeah, it's actually looking at how to keep your health. Okay, and if you look at it, okay, something like yoga, he's been able to get around millions of people to actually practice it. So you can imagine the repercussions it has had for the health industry. Okay. Even his live participation when he conducts a workshop, or a camp, you have 100,000 people come in Bombay and attend at 4 o'clock in the morning. Okay. So we have to give it to him, because he's actually taking up something which doesn't cost anything, which is very, very affordable. Okay. And if you do it, it can actually help you in your well-being. Okay, so that's Ramdev. Okay, so let's look at some of the other institutions who have looked at how to bring in change in the rural sector. Okay, so this is from IIT Madras. Okay, the professor is Professor Junjunwala. He's spent a lot of time trying to find out what can be done to improve the especially the technology interface at the rural level. Okay, so he's gone to the villages, seen whether it's an ATM which disposes of just simple rupees, or it's a free internet that can be provided, or a low cost internet connection that can be connected. Okay, how communities can actually make use of these networks. A lot of learnings. Okay, and he's written a lot of papers. He's based at IIT Madras. Okay. Of course, similar things are there in other IITs also. Sitara is a center at IIT Bombay, looks at technology alternatives for rural areas. Okay, and they have a master's program and a PhD program in that. And they network with many villages around Mumbai to to study them and implement them. Similarly, the Center for Sustainable Technologies at IIC Bangalore is another center which has been for a very long looking at issues connected with deforestation, agriculture. Of course, Professor Swaminathan's Research Foundation now at Chennai does similar work. He's the man behind the agricultural boom. Okay, so that's something which is out there. Even Microsoft Research in Bangalore concentrates on actually our developments at the rural sector, which is a very interesting. A lot of their projects are for the emerging markets. Okay, so these are very nice takeaways. Okay, I come from IDC, and if you looked at our vision statement in 1969 when we started, we said we are going to do design to meet social needs. The social was part of our statement in 1969. And as students, we were encouraged to take up projects, at least one project which has social relevance. So when I did my project here, one of the projects I did was actually development of crutches for people with physical disabilities. So similarly, you'll see right across. I'm just running through it. On the left side are products for rural sector. A much more convenient water jug to put it into the well and take it out, a chair which can become a backpack to school, things which use solar energy. Okay, this is the systems that can help actually the elderly or the hospital on a mobile. Okay, computers for elderly. Okay, web space for farmers. Okay, so if you look at the top, even they are actually very low cost, low energy vehicles. Okay, and if you look at the bottom side, it's use of sustainable materials like bamboo. Yeah, so this is how IDC has been looking at it. Even now, we have a lot of projects connected with trying to meet the social relevance part of it. Okay, so let's go to some really nice developments that have happened. Okay, this is another example. Okay, so the man behind it is Dr. Verghese Kurian. The setup is milk, and as you know, it's the largest cooperative company in the world. Okay, and all the producers, the milk producers, are the owners of this company. So there are 2.9, you know, farmers who are actually part of this business. And of course, initially the milk was generated by the farmer. He had to take the trouble to take it to the town to sell it. And yeah, if he can't sell it, it is wasted. Okay, it was all decentralized. It was done from man to man. Okay, and it had a limitation. So what he did was that he made it into a collective uh, activity. That means that the milk is collected from the farmers, comes to a centralized place, okay, and distributed, through a network means, and some are preserved and converted into other products. Okay, so if you look at it, Amul is a very favorite product. All of us use Amul, extremely popular in our households. Okay, so that's based on that. But the essence behind it is they made it affordable. It's collectively owned, so there's a social responsibility to this particular company. Okay, so that's one way of looking at it. Okay, so let's look at another company which started quite long time back. Okay, when mobiles came in, and that can actually take a mobile to a village, and then through a fingerprint, actually you can actually authenticate the payment system. So what they did was that it's not a bank, but they tied up with almost all the banks in our country. Okay, what they do is the last mile for the banks. They actually have a person who has some little money in his backpack, goes to the village. Okay, either people can actually put it in the bank for safekeeping, or he lends the money to them for them to start a business or buy a cow or something like that. Okay, so they covered 50,000 villages. As you can see, they have 100 million customers, user base. Okay, it employs 25,000 people. Okay, so that's something which Fino did. Okay, of course, after that, the PMO's office has replicated this effect by making people with an Aadhaar card own a bank account. So if it needs that money needs to be transferred to these accounts, now you can actually transfer it to them. Okay, so with that, they brought a whole lot of other people into the banking sector itself. Okay, again, another interesting example, an enterprise called as, it's a startup called Fool, and their, study actually showed that all temples we offer flowers. Okay, and after the flowers are offered, what does the temple do with the huge, number of flowers? Except that it used to go into waste, right? It used to be it was not never recycled. So they come up with this idea: is there a way to convert it into fragrances or pigments that can be used in holy? Okay, things like that. And out of that, the concept of fool was born. Okay, and interestingly, the flowers are collected. It started with temples around the Ganges. Okay, and it's actually women folk who actually do all the activities. You can smiling faces, seen below. They are part of the enterprise. They actually sort out the flowers and convert it into incense sticks. Okay, and they are marketed by the Fool Corporation. Okay, so again, an interesting, problem that got solved, and yeah, it is made into a product at the end of it. Okay, a lot of companies. Tata uh, has this product called as the Swatch. Okay, which is actually a water filter. The problem with the water filters is that they need electricity, right? All of us have electricity at our homes in urban areas, but in rural areas, comes in once in a while or it's not there. Okay, so it's based on actually filtering the water using nanoparticles. Okay, very nice product. Okay, they aims to market 3 million of them a year. Okay, and I think one of the nicest examples was actually is the small car. Uh, Started in 2003. Ratan Tata saw the typical Indian family riding on a scooter, very accident prone. Okay, so he said that can I actually make a safe car or a safe mode of transport, which is also affordable. Okay, so they had a team of 500 young engineers and they worked bottom upwards to do this. Okay, uh, uh, and if you look at it, okay, it started at retailing at about 1.5 lakhs. That's what the price of it. In fact, it started with as a 1 lakh car. Okay. But of course, the story of Nano is different. It should have been a successful venture. All the ingredients were there. It was backed up by a very well-known, company that we trust. But things actually went wrong. We'll just take a couple of minutes to understand this. Ajinta, no mobile. I don't know the time. Okay, sorry. Okay, so let's look at the positives. Okay, so with a lot of effort they did this. Okay, they priced it around 1 lakh rupees in the beginning. Okay, this was in 2008. It won Best Car of the Year awards in 2009, 2010, 2012. Okay, it was positioned as the most affordable people's car. Okay, and it was built on very economical engineering principles. It was built, they actually, you know, uh, dismantled the whole car, okay, and questioned the authenticity of each of those parts. Okay, so whenever it's not needed, they actually got rid of it. For example, in the wheel, normally we have 4 screws to, you know, fit the wheel. They said, why do we need 4 screws? Can we actually do it with 3? So Nano has 3 of them, if you can see, right? So they questioned everything and and they brought down the prices to an unbelievable level. Okay, this a car at this price has never been produced in the world. Okay, so Tata Nano was the first to do it, but things didn't go so well. It's not just building the car or the company. Okay, inadvertently, the media played a very big role in positioning it as a cheap car or a poor man's car. Okay, it got that label, and Tata's did everything in their power to, in terms of advertising and campaigns, to undo this, but it actually never went. Okay, and people also equated low cost with low quality. Okay, and also unfortunately for the Tata Nano, they also had incidents of some of these vehicles catching fire. Okay, and that also got blown up on the media. Okay, and of course, you know that they had to shift the factory premise from West Bengal to Gujarat, and this incurred great costs. Okay, and how to actually take it out of when they go into production was a big question mark. Okay, and it delayed the launch of the car itself. Okay, they tried repositioning or redoing their promotions, financing, and distribution networks, but it really didn't help in the long run, and they had to close. Such a nice product that had to be closed. But some are lessons, that they are very nice experiments, costly experiments, though. Yeah, but something which we can learn out of. Okay, another one of them is something which our Ministry of Human Resources wanted to do. They wanted to bring in a computer which is really inexpensive, so it becomes affordable. Okay, so they thought that can we actually think of a tablet which doesn't cost more than 1,500. Okay, so either we can give it free or it's affordable to many of the students. Okay, it uses open source software, and they also partnered with IITs and did that. Okay, they actually brought in about 100,000 of these devices at this price range, but for some reason it didn't become popular. They couldn't push it. But what it did, in fact, was it brought down the price of tablets. Okay, so you can actually go into the market and now buy a tablet for about 3,000 rupees, which was not there. 10 years back, the tablets were very expensive. But now you can actually get, affordable tablets, and it kind of showed or paved the way for it. Okay, so another good example is this refrigerator, okay, called as Chotukul, done by Godrej. Okay, and it when they did the design, they had the women folk from the village come and give their, feedback at every part of the design process. So we call it as co-created with the village women. Okay, and it runs on a battery. Yeah, it can run it. Yeah, and it's very inexpensive. Yeah, and it cools. You can keep things cool inside this. This is Chotukul. Similar experiences of what Tata Nano did, for example, no, GE did it for the cardiogram. Cardiogram is usually around $10,000, which is like 8 lakhs, right? That's the minimum price for a cardiogram, and they made a handheld one at one-tenth the cost by re-engineering. Okay, the same principles which Tata Nano did, they use the same principles to actually bring down the cost to an unbelievable level. Okay, so these are nice examples from the industry. We have also, this company which became very popular around the 70s and 80s. It was, it was like a startup company called Nirma. What they did was that they did two studies. One was that, the rural sector was given up. They said they don't have affordability, so we won't even bother selling to them. So that was the, mindset at that point of time. Second was that actually washing involves a lot of water. Okay. So Nirma invested quite a lot of time and effort in finding out if there is a way of doing the soap which doesn't take so much of, it doesn't have so much of oil content, so it reduces the amount of liquid necessary to clean something. Okay, so they reduced that, and they came out with something called as Nirma, and they actually targeted the small towns and the rural sector and became extremely popular. Okay, and it actually took away the market from very well-known brands. Okay, and became a household name. At the same time, there was this very nice suggestion by Professor C.K. Prahlad saying that the rural sector is potentially a very good sector. You need to look at it from an affordable point of view. You have to make the product reach to them at an affordable cost. Okay, so that means that they don't have large pockets of money; they have small pockets of money. So make it into small packets. Okay, so the concept of sachets came in. Okay, and of course, after this, all the multinationals took on to it, right? Now, if you go to a village, this is what you see in the shops. You can buy shampoos, toothpaste, washing powder, any one of them through this. You pay 1 rupee, 2 rupees, 5 rupees to get these, right? So basically, if you look at it conceptually, it was making something very affordable. Okay. The other very recent example is the Oyo hotel rooms. Okay. And what this person did was that he traveled very young age. He traveled and stayed in lots of hotels, cheap hotels. Okay. And really, it was like a, data collection that he did, that was his primary research, going to all these places and finding out and saying that maybe I can do something to, bring in the standards, okay, of all these hotels, bring them into a network, okay, so that it becomes something which is accepted by people who want these services. So that's what he did. He actually offered very affordable. Okay, it's not that expensive. It's also safe. Okay, and it's extremely clean. Okay, for to do this, okay, he went into a franchise of converting old hotels into this. Okay, and they were required to follow minimum standards to bring it into the OYO level. Okay, and he did network marketing. And of course, first it was India, now it's gone worldwide. Okay, if you look at it, 44,000 OYO hotels, 1.2 million rooms. That's a very big number across four continents. Okay, and of course, the COVID has been a downtime for all these things, but I think they'll probably come out of it. Yeah, but the thinking behind it is very important for us to notice. Okay, that something which is not so affordable, he made it affordable at a price, and offered it on a platform, and brought in this safety and standards and cleanliness into this system. Okay, so we'll go to the next part of it. Okay, so we've kind of looked at some of the work that has been done, and many of these ideas, if you realize, they have been generated in India. Okay, and now we look at what are the factors which are necessary for, if you want to bring in affordable design. Okay, one of the big factors is this. Okay, minimalism. Okay, it was part of the modern movement. You've seen the slides on that. Basically, less is more. Okay, and if you look at it philosophically, what else but Buddhism, which actually practices this, right? And if you look at it, it has respect for life on earth. Okay, uses only essential things that is essential for you to live. Okay, based on principles of simplicity. Yeah, and it has moved a whole lot of people. Okay, not just in India but across the world, right? Their philosophy. Okay, and if you look at swatches of practices from India to Southeast Asia to Japan, you'll see that they all follow some parts of this. Okay, and it has influenced a lot of thinking and doing also, which is very, 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 very interesting. Okay, so Buddhism as a philosophy is something that we can actually follow. Okay, and it has lessons for all of us in that sense. Okay, and the person who actually practiced it is Gandhi. Okay, he lived a life live simple life, and he actually proposed very sustainable practices. Okay, less is more is something which he showed in his life with respect to what he ate, what he wore. Okay, even in terms of production, consumption, yeah, what you need to possess. Yeah, he had his sayings, and it has influenced a whole lot of people, right? Yeah, so I think this is a very important factor for affordable design, and in the long run, it leads to sustainable practices. And if it can become part of our culture, some of them are actually, if you look at it. You know, your mother will get angry if you leave food on the on in your plate, right? She'll say that you better finish it. You know, I'm not going to throw it into the dustbin. Okay. We'll always be told to switch the light off when you exit a room. Okay. We don't necessarily do it in offices, but at home we do it. You know, at night, however wealthy you are, you follow this. Yeah. So they become actually cultural if you look at it. Okay. Two books, as references, great books. Small is Beautiful by Schumacher, which says that you cannot grow at the rate you're growing. Yeah. And yeah, so economics as if people matter. That's a very nice book to read. Dr. Ajanta has also talked about this, the limits to growth book, which the Club of Rome said that we have finite resources on this earth. You cannot just make use of all of it in 100 years. There'll be nothing left for the future generations, right? So you have to think of a very long-term view of whatever you do. Okay, so it's a very, very important aspect of it. So yeah, if you don't need something, don't use it. Yeah. So that's the next book. The next book is also a very interesting book. Okay, it's The Fortune at the Bottom of the Pyramid by C.K. Prahlad, which said that please don't neglect the rural folks. Okay, and if you can make it affordable, that's a huge market, and that's what has happened in India. If you look at it, yeah, in the 90s, 90% of the market was in urban areas, and 20% was what was in the rural sector. Now, if you look at it, 60% or 65% of the market is actually the rural sector, and it's only the 40 or 45% that's in the urban sector. So yeah, the affordability. So if Maruti wants to sell its car, it actually thinks of the more people who buy their cars in the rural areas than in the urban areas, right? Okay. So even if you look at it, the affordability, unfortunately, is also changing, right? The bottom of the pyramid was very huge, earning just $1,500 or less per year. This is in 2002. In a span of about 15 years, if you look at it, that bottom of the pyramid now earns around $10,000. Okay, which is really interesting. Okay, of course, if you go down to the bottom of it, we still have a lot of people who still earn less than 1,500. Yeah, that's something which should not happen, but yeah, that's something which we need to look at. Okay. So if you look at what are we looking at it, okay, in terms of sustainability, in terms of finite resources we have in this world, first, of course, is the energy. Energy is limited. Okay, we've been digging it out of the earth, and now we know that we should not do it anymore. So we have to look at wind, the sun as sustainable energy, that we can actually get from. Okay, so space is limited. We on Earth has finite space. Okay, so what we consume is dependent on the environment that we have. Okay, so these are limitations. Okay, and we have to look at this limitation in a long span of time. We cannot look at it in just now. What its benefits in the next 10 years. We need to look at it as what its benefits in a very long time frame. Yeah, otherwise we are burning out if you look at it, right? Okay, so let's look at some of the practices which people have had, which have created very interesting outputs. Okay, so if you'll see that in our culture, it's there with respect to making patterns. For example, Rangoli pattern is a very simple example. You put a grid, and out of this grid you can create many variations. Okay, and depending on the raw materials that are available in the different parts of the country, some use colors, dyes, natural dyes, flowers. Yeah, so the material is changes, but the essence of what you do remains the same. Okay, which is really interesting. Okay, because the format is simple, but the outputs are, you know, it leads to many varieties, right? The same thing happens, if you look at classical music actually in our country. If you look at it, the singer or the instrumentalist will never play the same way he plays. The structure is the same, but the output is different every time he renders it. Okay, which is the essence of classical music in our country. If you look at the textiles itself, the same thing happens. Okay, if you look at, for example, the person who weaves this. Huh, I'm hearing some sounds, but yeah. So if you look at yeah, the person who weaves the sari, right? He has a simple mechanism by which he can actually change the pattern. So every time the sari is woven, it actually creates a new pattern. Okay, so this is very interesting. Okay, the same used to happen when we had this, you know, uh, way of actually supplying just the bare structure of the truck, right? The chassis of this truck used to get, they used to actually go from, let's say, Pune for Tatas to different parts of the country. And in these nooks and corners, the body used to be built. Okay, so you can see that the part which is built is very colorful, painted, decorated, and it created variations. Okay, you can talk about safety of it, but actually, in fact, it has something very cultural about it. Yeah, people were very proud of their vehicles. Yeah, it's the same thing still has it in, it's there on auto rickshaws if you see, right? Yeah, and it has this vehicle graphics and variety and variations that you can see it. Okay, so you can ask whether this is a good thing to do or monotony is a good thing to do. Okay, so when we buy our cars now, they come in, 5 colors, and we have to choose one of them, and it's the same with. Yeah, Manish, any issues? Okay. Yeah, I'll move on to the next one. Yeah, see, this is also part of what we are getting, right? Okay. One is that we've kind of get a lot of things free. Okay, one of the things that we get free is through the internet. And the person who showed the way is Tim Berners-Lee, okay, who made it available. He not have made it available for free. He could have charged a price for it, but he made it available. So you see that on the internet, a lot of things are free. Searching is information is free. Your mail is free, receiving mails. You can look for information on the net. Okay. So is the case. Okay. So a lot of applications which have come after that, if you look at social media or entertainment, you actually get it free. Okay. So you can look at it. That means that they have another means of actually, forming their business models, but the reach to the final user is at actually a very affordable cost or at no cost. Okay, this is something which the internet can actually offer. Okay, again, a very interesting concept. Okay, we also need to look at the lessons we can learn from IKEA. Okay, so this is Mr. Kamprad. Okay, so when he was just 17, his father actually gave him a bit of money because he managed to clear the school because he had dyslexic. Okay, so because of that, he said, you can do whatever you want, and he put up a small furniture, factory producing furniture. Okay, and for some reason, right from beginning itself, he was obsessed with the cost. He wanted to bring the cost down. at whatever cost, So he was always thinking, how to bring down the cost in terms of the materials, in terms of the components, in terms of packaging, in terms of transportation. Okay, can I make it modular? And you see that that's how the idea of IKEA was born. Okay, if you look at it, these are, he made it affordable because he said assembly is something that the user can do. Okay. Transportation, he made it more effective because he made them, if you look at it, they come in beautiful compact boxes. All furniture, whether it's your big sofa or your cot, they all get broken down into these cardboard boxes, and they come neatly packaged into your homes. Okay, and yeah, and they're sold in these huge stores, or of course now you can get it online. And it's an experience to go to an IKEA store, because what they've done is that they actually, don't straight away go into you buying things. You actually have to do the walkthrough, okay, in which they actually show you the different settings. In fact, as you enter the walkthrough, they give you a pencil, is a paper scale, okay, and a small notebook to take notes. Okay, so when you go there, you can see the numbers, you can measure to see if it can fit into your drawing room or the space that you have, and you have these different environments through you which you walk through. At the end of it is actually the place where all these components are housed, and you pick it up. Okay, that's how it is done. It's very, very nicely, interestingly done. Okay, just talking about this Billy bookcase, it was one of the, very, they did it very early on. Okay, it's a very modular piece of furniture which you can make basically shells out of it. Okay, and very inexpensive. Okay, and you'll see that it's actually one is sold every 3 seconds in this world. Okay, till now they've sold about 60 million worldwide. Okay, so the numbers for IKEA are mind-boggling. It says that one third of all Europeans are actually born on a IKEA bed. You know, so we have to learn lessons out of it. Okay, so they've brought down the price. Okay, to quite an extent, it's very affordable and also durable. Okay, and how has it done that? And it's a profit-making company. Yeah. So how have they done this? Okay, so this is the big question mark. Okay, when it comes to India, we're very reluctant to do things on our own. I'm not sure how many of people would buy IKEA furniture and actually assemble it themselves. They'll probably call a carpenter to come and put it together for them. Okay, so we don't have this in our DNA, doing something of your own, right? We always have somebody else to do it for us. Okay, which is actually why I put the big question mark here. Okay. The other very interesting thing, this is written in our, Shastras, that, knowledge gained is shared is knowledge gained. Okay. And if you don't share it, then the knowledge is lost. Okay. So basically, if you look at all traditional knowledge, it has come from generation to generation. Your grandma would know cure for so many illnesses, which will pass it on to us. You know, daughters, and they'll pass it on to the next generation. That's how it used to go on, okay, traditional knowledge. And there was no patenting on this. It is all free knowledge, right? And one makes use of it. Yeah. So we know that, for example, turmeric is useful for so many things, right? And of course, at the back of it is also the open source movement, right? Which says that if there is something that you want to make it free and generate it, you can actually share this knowledge. Okay, and others can build up on it. Okay, and it's gaining a lot of, so something maybe you do in your spare time, or you said it's useful to a lot of people, so you make it available. Okay. And of course, because of the Creative Commons, you can also put this mark on it. Okay. That means that people cannot copy your idea and start making money on it, but they can copy your idea and develop it and modify it and make it better. Yeah. So these are the instances of it. for it. But these are all movements which are very strong and gaining. I'm sure it will be, you'll see more of it in years to come. Okay, so let's look at factors. Okay, starts from user insights. Okay, it could be like the way Tata saw got an insight. Okay, through social, cultural, economic factors. Okay, bottom of pyramid or middle of pyramid as a user segment is a very good way to start about it. Yeah, so you're making products which are useful to a lot of people. Okay. Second is you start from the bottom, not from the top. That means that you think of the minimum requirement constraints and build the design upwards. Okay, so you start with something which is minimum and then add if it is required. Okay, so that's another way to look at it. And employ economical engineering techniques. Like you can adopt it, you can reduce it, you can combine it, you can repeat it. Okay, you can mass produce it, you can outsource it, open source, etc. And of course, many times it might be because you can tweak an existing technology, whether it's the mobile TV or mobile plus banking, sometimes phone plus email. Yeah, all this pulp plus filter combinations actually make a difference. Okay, so let's look at the names for it. Okay, it's called by different names. Okay, now we know that affordable design is part of social design. It's also called as reverse innovation. Okay, you tweak the innovation to make it much more affordable. You can also call it as constraint-based innovation. That means you start with constraints, okay, and then build. Like IKEA, for example, he wanted the cost reduction as a constraint. He did everything possible to, do that because he believed that things should not be that expensive. Yeah, and because of IKEA, a lot of people brought down the cost, right? Yeah, and many times it involves tweaking of technology. It's also called as frugal innovation. Of course, we are calling it as affordable design. Okay, in India, people call it as jugaad, but it's not really jugaad. You should call it, you couldn't have built Tata Nano with jugaad techniques. It's much more than that. Yeah. So let's look at the insights. So middle and bottom of pyramid are important sectors, not just socially but economically, because if you put the numbers together, they are a very large number. Apply bootstrapping techniques in the process of design and engineering. Yeah, whether this is uh, applicable is questionable. The Jugaad as a management technique. Okay, with that, I'm coming to the end of my talk. Okay, so I studied in, Kannada as one of the subjects, and there was this beautiful poem about the usefulness of the cow. The poem goes on to say how cow is useful. It gives milk, it plows the fields, you know, and yeah, it can pull a cart, so take you to places, right? Even if it is after dead, you kind of purpose their skin and you make products out of it. Okay. So at the end of the poem, it asks, you know, but as a human being, what are you really useful for? Okay, that's a profoundly, good question to ask because if you look at it, we have been selfish as ever in the long run, right? And we only care about ourselves and not at all the life that is on this earth. Whereas the cow, for example, is there providing so many things for all of us. Okay, so that's one, and I'll end, you know, with showing you a project demo that the students have done. Okay, let me get it on the screen. Just give me a minute.
Hello, Team Padma. Drishti and again I missed.
Okay. So just a small introduction. Are you able to hear it? Yeah, I'm presuming you're able to hear it. Okay.
Yes,
So
sir, yes.
yeah, okay. Thanks, Manish. Okay, so this is a project. It's a 5-week project done with students, third year, Bachelor of Design students at IDC. And the project is called as a systems level project because they have to look at a very large picture, select an area to work with, and then come out with a solution. Okay. And this particular group looked at housing societies, and how they can, because in a housing society, there's so much of waste that is generated, and how can you actually make it a bit more sustainable than it could be. Okay. So we look at it from that point of view. And they make use of NGOs, they make use of affordable techniques to do it. Okay, so in that sense, it's related to the topic I'm talking about. Okay, but also, the project will show you a method for solving a problem. Okay, a method which takes care of very large systems to solve problems. Okay, so it's a video presentation, so I'm just going to play it for you.
Said Rita. This is our final presentation for System Design project and we'll be going through the work we have done over the past 5 weeks. This presentation consists of our initial mappings and analysis, primary and secondary research, main problem areas and sub-areas, causal loop diagrams, further analysis, solutions, and evaluation. Understanding the system. We use various system thinking tools like giga mapping, causal loop diagrams, connection circle to understand the system. We started off by writing down all the components in a society in a broad way and referred to this to in-depth analysis chapter. We then went deep into each area and mapped subsystems and interactions within them to understand which areas are more connected to each other. Along with this, we mapped out the daily life of an individual as well as a collective daily life happening in a society to understand the activities and practices that take place. After the preliminary analysis, we made a connection circle on current sustainable alternatives by writing down factors that influence the use of it. Inferences. From the mappings, we had some inferences about how collective effort is required to make society sustainable, how the lack of availability of space is a concern in urban cities, and difficulty in implementing a new system already existing infrastructure, the lack of awareness in terms of who to approach, where to get, and the effort required is too much compared to the motivation that we will have. There were a few other smaller insights which later shaped our problem area. We did primary research through a survey and received 115 responses. These are some of the key insights we got through it. People are aware of how our lifestyle affects our environment, sustainable alternatives, and also claim to know how to shift and claim to be doing something about. However, the answers that they gave about uh, things in their daily life proves this wrong. People might perform some actions to save the environment, but they usually are not ready to sacrifice convenience. Most of the activities are found to be performed either due to the benefits to the user or due to unavailability of other options. The respondents are not fully aware of what it is like the user of a sustainable product. They are mostly concerned about post-purchase efficiency and installation costs and don't know how it can benefit them. Problem area. After doing in-depth research and analysis, we realized how there are plenty of sustainable solutions that exist for almost everything. Yet, for some reason, not a lot of people have adopted them into their lifestyle. Hence, instead of creating more alternatives, we had to figure out why they are not using it and solve that. Then we made a causal loop diagram on the adoption of sustainable alternatives and identified this feedback and reinforcing loops. From this causal loop diagram, we could identify the problem sub areas of convenience, reluctance, and awareness about how to do things. Our core proposition is that we have a timeline based approach to increase the number of users of sustainable products and practices in a systematic manner by tackling issues of reluctance and increase awareness on a society and community level. Final solution, the user groups. There is a spectrum of different mentalities in a society. All of them having varying degree of reluctance towards adopting sustainable practices. The spectrum runs from the most adamant to those who have already incorporated sustainable alternatives in their lifestyle. The trans-theoretical model tells about the 6 stages a person goes through when undergoing change, and each stage requires a different kind of action to avoid relapse. Using this information, we came up with a user groups based on different stages for creating appropriate interventions. So the first user group is people at the action stage that have already adopted sustainable alternatives. The second user group is people at the preparation stage that want to adopt sustainable alternatives but don't know how to. The third group is people at the contemplation stage where they know about sustainability but don't care much about it. And the fourth user group are people at the pre-contemplation stage where they are not at all ready to consider adopting sustainable alternatives.
So since figuring out our user groups and setting a timeline was the first stage in our final solution, we then approached Professor Ajanta, where she introduced us to this model that basically summarizes the intersections between circular and angular functions and the responses over time. So with that knowledge, we decided to create a brief diagram that summarizes our whole process. We first finalized our 4 user groups, which we've included as a spectrum along the vertical axis, which represents degrees of propensity to change. We then divided our whole timeline into 4 phases, which is the top horizontal axis, as steps for our interventions. And then we finally have the activity and resident intersections at the bottom, which is basically the housing society activities that need to take place in that given time frame. So the green boxes over here are hence the possible interventions that would occur in each phase while targeting a certain user group. And the size specifies how big of an intervention is required. So with that in mind, our first phase, which is phase 0, would involve targeting user group 1, which is right at the bottom, while also laying the groundwork for the other user groups. User group 1 is basically people who have started to shift to a sustainable lifestyle, hence their propensity of change is quite low, which means they're more inclined to shift. So then in the next phase, which is phase 1, would target the second user group, which is the people who want to shift but do not know how to. But the interventions in here, which is the second green box from below, do not affect the first user group, but would affect the ones following them. And so the graph continues. With that, we can see a line forming, which is basically a representation of our whole approach. As you can see at the end, it becomes parallel to the x-axis, indicating that the complete shift has happened. We would also have another area on the right, which focuses on creating a platform to record and articulate the change happening over time. So based on these intersections and the spread of the user groups across a timeline, we created the major phases. Phase 0 is where we laid our groundwork, and this is the part where we contact NGOs and other businesses to whom we'll propose our plan. The main aim is to plant the idea of sustainability in the minds of people, and we really hope to achieve this through restructuring marketing strategies, to which we'll get to later. So phase 1 is where we deal with our second user groups who are mostly in the preparation or the action stage. And we would mostly target the second user group, which includes people who are willing to shift to sustainable alternatives but are unaware of how to do it. So the main aim in this case is to provide them with a smooth and easy transition, and we hope to achieve this through the spread of how to shift. Phase 2 deals with the third user group, which is at the contemplation stage, and the main aim in this case would be to reduce the reluctance and maybe create some sort of a trigger which would help them consider the shift. So finally, we hope to achieve this by using phase 1 as a cause and leading to the rise of demand of sustainable options. We will also use the tag of personal benefits. Finally, we come down to phase 3, which focuses on user group 4, and they are the most adamant when it comes to a shift. So by this time, sustainable options should have become normalized, and they will be left without an option but to shift. So phase 3 will be the combined effect of the previous mentioned phases, and this will create a fear of missing out, which will in turn drive the adamant people to become a part of the transition. As the final element, we intend to measure or record the change, and this serves as proof that shows that the transition is actually showing results, which will in turn motivate the people to further perform sustainable actions. So we aim to do this through various platforms, of which some are quantitative and qualitative, some are angular platforms which are technology-based, and circular platforms which are based on human-human interaction. We also have universal indicators at a household level, like the indicators and targets set by the Sustainable Development Goals, Goal 11 by the United Nations. Here we have created a scenario of a miniature residential society so as to explain how our approach would set in action. It is also an example of how the approach would differ based on the area or domain we're dealing with. So in this case, we've considered examples and interventions that are in a more society level while focusing on hurdles that certain households might come across while implementing those actions, and hence proposing certain solutions to resolve those issues and giving possible parameters to record the change. So these are the four focus households that come under our Padma Cooperative Housing Society. All of these four households are based on the four user groups. So there's H1, who have already adopted various sustainable methods. There's H2, who are well aware of the impact and the concept of a sustainable environment, but don't really know how to shift. There's H3, who are unaware of available alternatives and are quite skeptical and reluctant about the existing options. And finally, there's H4, who are quite adamant when it comes to shifting and would rather lead a comfortable life than to adopt any of these solutions. So our first action is something as simple as plantation of trees, where we have come across multiple statistics stating how if every single household would plant trees every year, it would make a huge difference. Anyway, in this area, we'll be focusing on the social aspects of the action. While the reluctance level for this would be quite low, people might still come across certain hurdles of not wanting to do it because it doesn't affect them and is too much of work. Hence, some solutions would involve one, creating a sense of togetherness by doing this particular activity together, which is along with your family, friends, neighbors, etc. The second is to leave the choice of plant to the person. Hence, you could go for options that involve low maintenance, for example, cactuses, aesthetics like pretty flowers, edible or medicinal plants, etc. The third is we could also incorporate an engagement factor by actually forming a connection with the plant. Which, for example, could be by naming and addressing them as a person. And this might as well could turn into a trend in social media. So a way to indicate or measure this particular change would be to set some kind of milestone every 6 months and possibly committing a certain public space to that. Even something like a reward system might help. So here is us basically trying out the new trend of naming our plant, #living the sus life. So as our second example, we'll be looking into incorporating green energy sources in our households. And in this case, it's solar panels. Here we'll be focusing on the economic aspect of society, which is saving money in the longer run. While most people see a profit in this kind of investment, it might be too big of a change for people who are just starting to shift. So hence exposing them to other green small scale alternatives like solar cooker and smart appliances would ease them into the shift. While there are other ways you can consume less existing energy at home by implementing certain practices, which is a much simpler transition. And as an indication of this whole process, there could be a new system of monthly bills that focus on highlighting the difference in cost, which is basically the reduction of cost, and hence motivating them to further try out other sustainable stuff. There could be electric meters at home that would also display the amount due at a certain point of time rather than just showing the units consumed. So the people at home can have a better idea of when they're over consuming electricity. And for the final example, we'd be looking into waste management and in particular public littering and segregation of waste. So we would be tackling the environmental aspect of society in this and see how we can make people participate in this particular act, considering how it is literally second nature to just chuck the waste. Some solutions here would involve making them realize and confront them while they're doing that particular action. For example, some kind of visual cue as a reminder of praising them to do it successfully by properly putting them in the dustbin successfully, by segregating them successfully, and so on. We could also target their social image, as since it's a public space, people tend to be more aware of their actions. And the third way is the beautification of the society, which a lot of developed cities have adopted. Hence, the cleaner the space, less likely for a person to actually litter the public space. And as an indication of the process, we could have cleaners give monthly feedback on how people are maintaining these coastal areas while they throw in waste.
As part of the immediate steps, we can now approach societies or even NGOs with our framework, and they can use it to come up with activities and products, which is basically phase 0. Examples and possibilities are suggested in the guidance. The societies can come up with their own activities using the template provided, which help in identifying key elements required to make relevant decisions when formulating a program that is suitable to a particular relatively small group of people, like a housing society, and also helps in thinking about the intent and effect of each step in the plan.
So for evaluation, we presented our approach to the council members of 3 different housing societies that we belong to, and we received valuable feedback. The main concern that was raised by all 3 of them was the behavioral maintenance aspect in the long run. And one of them liked the idea of having each household plant a tree every year, and he said he would try to implement that in their society. Our future steps would involve working more closely on the project with respect to the feedback that we received. And we have linked our references here. But before we conclude, we would like to thank Professor Ravi, Professor Ajanta, and Professor Prabodh for guiding us throughout the project and giving us valuable feedback. We would also like to thank the people who have helped with our primary research and the Residential Association members for helping us with our evaluation. Thank you.
Sir, I'm
Yeah.
audible?
Yeah, can you hear me? But I think my,
Yes, sir.
yeah, so thanks
Yes.
again. Yeah, thanks a lot. If there are any questions, I can answer.
Still, I have not received any questions, sir, but whenever received, then really directly contact with you.
Sure.
But thanks a lot, sir. It was really one of the very knowledgeable presentation by you through the synchronizing way of your experience and the society experience and lots of correlated experiences in context of affordable design. It is really amazing again. So thanks a lot to especially you. And thank you participants for joining this Fundamental of Social Design course in association with Banaras Hindu University, Maryland Institute College of Art, MICA, USA, and Michigan State University. Hopefully, you all received and perceived very good knowledge about the social design from different resource persons. That is the basic aim of this social design course. Again, thanks a lot for participation of today's session. Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Manish. Thanks so much. Thanks to all the participants who are listening. Yeah, bye for now.